Tom, I could just say disclose everything, goodbye, but that I've got to stretch it out a little bit. So anyway, glad to see well, not really see, but be here virtually with you. Let me just start out with a percentage just to kind of set up the topic. A lot of you might know this already, but the vast majority of litigation against residential agents, only in California, nowhere else, just here. And it's high. I started this 31 years ago, and it was about 70%. But now it's 90, in some areas a little bit higher than that, of lawsuits against residential agents only involve property condition disclosure cases. And it's really the scenario is the buyer moves in, and there's something that they don't like about the property, including its location and what's nearby, and I'll get into that as time permits. And they, rather than trying to fix it or trying to find a remedy, at least in California, a lot of people go to attorneys, and that's, I always like to say that a house can be falling apart and there's no litigation coming as long as the buyers know in advance, this place is falling apart. So it's about disclosure, so we'll talk about that. A lot of you know who Guff Hutchison is. I do, when there's not a pandemic, annual seminars with him up in the Sacramento area. And looking forward to the next one. That'll be a while to come with what's going on with the virus. I will email to Vicki some seminar notes, which I think she can kind of get out to everybody that's attending and in the offices that are here. And if you ever have any questions about disclosure, you can email me, and there's no charge for any of this. You can email me, call me, I'll give you my opinion on a particular property condition or how to word something or whatever. And I'm going to do I always do this. So if you've seen me before, you've seen this before, but I'm going to do a screenshot of everybody so everybody smile. There we are. Okay, that looks good. I did the Brady Bunch thing for a while, but I like this one better. Okay, let me just start with a little bit of content, and then in like, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes, we'll get to our sponsors and I'll introduce them, and they can say hi to everybody. So let's just kind of get through this quickly. And if you've heard me before, a little bit of review. You see on the screen there, part of the transfer disclosure statement, not the AVID. Now I'm going to assume that everybody in the room utilizes the AVID when you're doing your limited visual inspection. The AVID though is not a mandatory form. A lot of people think it is, but it's actually optional. It is used so prolifically, however, that it really has, in my opinion and the opinion of others, developed into the standard of care in the California courtroom. But the remaining or the continuing statutory form is the transfer disclosure statement, the TDS, or the tedious form, as some like to call it. And you'll see that it says there that we do a visual inspection, and that's our marching order, so to speak, for filling out the AVID. So a question for us this afternoon, now we're afternoon now, does that mean that the only things that you're going to be actually, jotting down on the AVID are things that you can actually like see and look at? The answer actually is no, even though the TDS, which I think came out, I think it was 1984 or 85, that term visual inspection has not changed. It's still there. But what it really means, or what it's morphed to mean in the courtroom, is sensory perception. Anything you notice, however you notice it, not just by sight alone, not just visual, but anything that you think might bother the buyers when they move in. The only buyers that ever sue are buyers that are surprised or caught off guard. So we just want to make sure that they know about something in advance, and we have to word it carefully. And often wording a disclosure carefully is actually easier and shorter than wording it in a way that can get us in trouble later on. So 2 examples of disclosures that we might make that are not visually perceived. One would be, let's say you're in a 2-story home, you're doing your AVID, and you're up and down the hallway upstairs into the bedrooms and bathrooms, you're looking for things to disclose. And as you traverse the hallway, you just get the sense that the floor is a little bit off kilter, a little bit, uneven. So before you come downstairs, after you're finished there, you get at the beginning of the hallway and you look at it, and you really can't see any unevenness. You've noticed it, so it is a sensory perception, but you can't, it's so slight, you can't really see it. You would still proceed to disclose it because it is a, well, sense of balance, I guess. It's a sensory perception. So upstairs hallway floor appears to have some unevenness or something. That way, you're letting the buyers, whichever side you're on, it's ultimately for the buyers, you're letting the buyers know that's something you found. So when they move in and they notice it, and they probably will, it's already been disclosed. They've already been told, and there shouldn't be any litigation issues. The second example, I have there strong odors in the home. Let's say you're representing the buyers. You get to the property, often by yourself these days now with the virus thing, and you open the front door, and it's like, there's a very strong smell in the home. It's just very pervasive, overwhelming maybe. And you know that the sellers have got 3 St. Bernards living in the house or whatever, or they've got, 12 cats or whatever. And that's what it kind of smells like. But you never want to link what you're picking up in terms of an odor or smell in the home with anything. You don't want to associate it with anything because there may be other factors involved that are not on your list that might be things that the buyers or the buyer's kids or whatever are allergic to. So we don't want to specify anything other than let them know that we're picking up something. Now, just a little FYI, you see on your screen there, I have strong odors. That's just for our purposes here this afternoon. You would never want to write that down on the AVID, and that's because it has the word strong, and strong is an adjective. So adjectives are the enemy of disclosure language. Big, small, major, minor, fair, poor, long, short, colors, numbers have no place. They have a place in advertising. They don't have a place in disclosure. But for our purposes, it's very pervasive. And one more example, it smells like mildew. You don't want to write down mildew because mildew is related to musty, I guess, and they're both related to mold. So we don't want to say anything that sounds like we're analyzing anything. So the answer is, or the question is, should you disclose an overwhelming smell in the home? Yes, a sense of smell. It's a sensory perception. But the question is, how do you disclose it? You're not going to write down, this house stinks. You're not going to do that. So we got to come up with something else, something I have in the notes that you might like. You might come up with something better, which is fine. I like words like obvious or apparent, obvious odor noted, apparent. I'm calling attention to something that the buyers have a right to know about. Again, whichever side I'm on, but I'm not setting myself up for a fall in court by getting too specific, but I let them know what I've picked up on. So any sensory perception doesn't make any difference which one. So the only 2 things on the AVID, besides the, like the address and the date, the only entries that should be written onto that form, everyone's got to be either a defect or a red flag, nothing, no other options. So just by way of definition, a defect is anything where there's really no temptation to try to like figure something out. It's like the window's broken, you have the AVID, or you're on your laptop with it, however you're doing it. Cracked window, broken window, nothing about the Frisbee that hit it or the baseball story, is just a broken window. You are totally and completely done with that disclosure. With the red flag issues, they're just more of a temptation to kind of what happened here, whatever, and we don't ever want to write down what we think happened here, even if we know or think we know. Now, let's say, just because this picture's up here on the screen now, let's say that stain is a bit smaller, and you look up and you think, well, it looks like a small water stain, and it probably is. But we don't want to say water, we don't want to say small, because that's an adjective. There's no need to say it. And even the word water in this, the way it would be written out there, small water stain, that's an adjective as well. In fact, it's kind of worse. It's sort of like an analytical word. I'm sort of figuring out what it's from. And I don't want to do that because I could be wrong. So anyway, red flag, a little more of a temptation to kind of figure things out, but we still don't want to do that. Now, 2 challenges, and there's lots of challenges. I'll just mention 2 for sake of time because we're going through a lot of material. You're in the, let's say it's the living room, and you can't find anything wrong. You can't find anything to disclose, and you're thinking, well, I don't want to leave it blank, there's just nothing to say. And you're looking around, there's nothing to disclose, which by the way is not a problem. If it's a problem, it's a happy problem to have. It's good when you can't find anything. usually when litigation occurs, the house is a mess. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So you can't find anything to say. That's like a happy problem, so to speak. But you notice a ceiling fan, you think, oh, good, I'll mention that to kind of demonstrate that I was in the room. So ceiling fan noted. The problem is the ceiling fan is not a defect and it's not a red flag. So it's not on our list of things to write down on that form. It's inventory. And since I started taking inventory in this room, like let's say it's a living room, I now need to take inventory in every room of the house. And now I have an addendum that I have to stick onto the AVID that just doesn't belong there. So I'll give you a solution here in a second. Another trap, I'll call it the spider web trap, real or figurative. There's no ceiling fan, so I can't write anything down. By the way, never compliment the room just to have something to write down. Like some agents make a comment they think is kind of nebulous, like, this room is in fair condition. Well, the word fair in court means good. Just like, I know we're having hot weather coming up this weekend, but let's say you're watching, going to go on a picnic Saturday. May not be a good idea for this weekend, but you're going to go on a picnic or something, or the beach, and you're watching the news weather the night before, and the weather person says, fair weather tomorrow. Well, that means good weather, and it means good in court too. So no compliments. Compliments belong in advertising, never in disclosure. And there's no ceiling fan. So what some agents do is they start to get real picky. They lower the bar far below anything that would ever be considered a material issue, anything that would possibly affect the value or desirability of the property. And they're writing down like there's a scuff mark at the baseboard by the door. It just doesn't belong on the form. So it's just too trivial. So what do you write down? Well, I've been at this, as I mentioned, for 3 decades. I go to all over California, only California, because nowhere else has the lawsuit stuff that we do. So there is some variation. So make sure, especially since we have different companies here today, that you go with office policy if it contradicts what I say. When I, been appearing in person, the little joke I would say is, I'm leaving town after this, so go with office policy. But basically, the phrase that has almost universal appeal is nothing noted, saying, hey, there is a living room, not all homes have them. I really was in it. I looked around. I just didn't see anything that really was worthy of disclosure. And that is a perfectly fine thing to write if it's okay with where you are, with where you hang your license, just so you have something to say for that room. And nobody would get the impression that you just forgot about it. So defects, red flags, that's all. All right, here's a technique, before we get to our sponsor, to take a rough draft disclosure that might be a little bit too wordy, and in just like a half a minute, consolidate it down to a good disclosure that's not quite so wordy. So I'll share a technique with you. It is free of charge. I'm not selling you anything here. There's no app to download. Anyway, so you're in the, if you got a broken window, that's easy. A cracked window, broken window, you're done. But now I'm in the kitchen. I'm there on my own. It's like, I've got a time frame here. I've got the sellers are on their way back home, or, there's more concerns now with the pandemic as to how many people are in the house. So, I got to move along here. But I'm in the kitchen. I see these stains. I'm thinking, well, what am I going to say here? Well, I don't want to stand here for 20 minutes deliberating on it. It could be a significant thing to disclose because it kind of looks like mold, although I don't know that it is. So here's the technique. Very old fashioned. You might be using a pen or pencil and a piece of paper like we used to. You find a piece of scratch paper and you write down whatever comes to mind. For me, not our final disclosure, but for me, 2 small black mold stains noted. You get the piece of paper, you fold it up, you put it in your briefcase, pocket, whatever. And then later on in the day, you're in your home office, your regular office, your car office, as long as you pull over if you're in your car. You take out that piece of paper and just start to scratch out every word you can, cross out every word you can that doesn't really have to be there. So I don't want to use numbers, smalls, and adjectives. And as you know, colors, I definitely don't want to write down mold. So all I have left over is stains noted. Great, now I'm done. I get on my actual AVID or my laptop, however you're doing it. Stains noted, finished with that disclosure, on to the next thing. I saw this happen in a supermarket a few months ago. This was a Bonds, and middle of the day, I was in a hurry like most of us usually are in the middle of the day. I look at my cart and I have 9 things in it, so 9 items. So I figure, well, I qualify for this express lane. When I was putting this stuff up on the counter, I noticed there was a guy behind me counting him. He's like looking around me like 1, 2, 3, whatever. I'm thinking, what's going to happen here? Well, nothing happened. There aren't a lot of arguments in supermarket. Well, there wouldn't be an argument anyway here, but not a lot of arguments in supermarket lines. There are a lot of arguments in real estate, which is what develops into litigation, because people only sue when they have a disagreement with somebody. Well, a couple of days later, I was at a Ralph's, and they do it much better. They have about 15 items. Let's say I had 18 items on that counter, and that same guy was behind me counting them, and he counted 18. 18 is about 15. It meets the parameters. It diffuses anything that might occur, not that much would occur over it. But we want to take our lead from that in a way for our disclosures. Something like this, it's got too many details in it, too many things to argue about. The 2 cracks, north wall, north living room, whatever, 3. It's too many things to disagree over. So these words here are not divinely inspired, but they're a lot better. I'm doing the job I need to do for the buyer, whichever side I'm on. I've been in the living room. I noticed a few cracks, and I just let them know that. Some cracks noted. Some is a kind of like non-litigious word. Some cracks noted living room walls, and I am finished with that disclosure. They're not going to catch me up on, you said there were 3 and there's 4. You said the northeast corner and it's the south of whatever. I just don't want to get into it with them, but I want to provide a disclosure that is the reason I'm there. It's kind of like the express lane concept. Okay, I am brought to you by 4 different service providers, and let's kind of take them in order here. So with the Fidelity family, first on the home warranty side, Brandy. And I think, Brandy, if I can't see you here right from where I'm looking, but make sure you're unmuted and tell us about home warranty, Fidelity Home Warranty.
Thank you so much. My name is Brandy Zamora with Fidelity National Home Warranty and Disclosure Source, and we are very happy to be here. Just a little bit about Fidelity. Fidelity Home Warranty is a pioneer in the home warranty industry. Our Southern California sales team alone has over 200 years of experience in home warranty. That makes us sound old, but we're not, but we do have a lot of experience in what we do here. We are not order takers. We consider ourselves business partners, and we want to be a part of your preferred transaction team. What sets us apart is our passion for education, our commitment to the claims process, and our free marketing tools. Not to mention our policy itself. We have not 1 upgraded plan, but we have over 3 upgraded plans. So some of the features and coverages that we offer are pest control, rekey service, our smart home technology, pre-season HVAC tune-up, plumbing systems, heating systems, AC, external pipe break, and stoppages due to roots. Now, there's a misconception that home warranty doesn't cover anything. That is just a few of the things that we actually cover. So we are here to provide value. Who you work with matters. Your home warranty company is one of the few service providers that actually stays with your client after the close of transaction. So who you work with matters. And just to let you guys know, we are fully COVID compliant. All of our vendors are adhering to all COVID rules and guidelines. We have been an essential service from the start. So we are up over like 300% of normal claims volume right now. There's a lot more usage, a lot more people are at home. Kids flush weird things down the toilet and they're home too. So those are the things that are different, and just keep that in mind. If you have any questions, we have 4 outstanding reps on this call and we are happy to help you. And shout out to Coastal Alliance. That is my office that I represent, and happy to see some of you guys on this call. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brandy. Michelle's here too, also part of the Fidelity family, but in the NHD side, and that's Disclosure Source. So take it away, Michelle.
Thank you. So yeah, we sell both. We sell the home warranty and the disclosure reports. So when shopping for diamonds, you look for the 3 C's, right? You're looking for cut, clarity, and carats. Well, when same things go when you're shopping for a natural hazard disclosure company, you're going to look for a complete report, a compliant report, and cost. Although your customers are not asking you to save them money, they're asking you to provide them the best report that's going to keep them out of a lawsuit, because we're talking about lawsuits and disclosures here. And so with that, we are not a fly-by-night company. We are a Fortune 500 company, which is not a bragging right, it's a security statement. So when you're looking for the best NHG company, think about Disclosure Source. Thanks.
Thank you. So you said cut, clarity, and carrots, but not cubic zircon. No, that's a whole nother thing. Okay.
No, that's a C word we'll leave out.
You leave that one out. That doesn't fly. Okay. Now, James usually calls in from the field. So let me just ask, and he'll have to unmute himself. And James, are you out there in Zoom land? I don't hear him. If he chimes in later, I'll bring him in. But let me just tell you what he does. Green Home Solutions. You'll hear in a minute from Elite from Dustin with Elite Home Inspections. Let's say a home inspector finds mold, or but they usually won't say it's mold. They'll say it like it looks like it or something, or it might be. Well, and the buyer is freaking out. Even in a hot market, the buyer's freaking out and getting nervous. Well, James is your go-to guy. You call him and he comes out, or his people come out. They isolate where the problem area is. They analyze it to see if it's mold. They, like he says, surgically remove it, finish it off, certify that it's mold-free, and he uses the expression, we talk the buyers off the cliff and settle them down, and everything's okay, and kind of makes the problem go away, and they're just really tied into the real estate transaction that way. So good to keep that number in mind for James. And that brings us to Dustin with Elite. Elite is the largest home inspection company in North America. There is no inspection company, anything like them. They're really unique. So Dustin, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you so much for that introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dustin Smith. I'm actually the territory manager for the Elite Group inspection company. We cover all of Southern California, so past Ventura County down to the Mexican border, out to Arizona and Nevada. We've been in business for 36 years, still family run and owned. We carry $1 million of insurance on every job that we do. We work Monday through Sunday, so weekends are not an issue for us. And a lot of people don't know, but home inspection is actually, there's nothing that's going to go ahead and make you have to be licensed. There's no legislation that goes ahead and makes you have to carry kind of insurance. So it's very important when you work with a home inspection company, you know that they're able to go ahead and take care of you should the unforeseen happen. And Elite is covered across the board on that. We also do residential and commercial inspections, as well as sewer cams, termite. We do mold inspection as well. And we just brought on a new roof certification process. And what it's going to do, it's going to allow you a 2, 3 to 5 year leak guarantee on your home through Elite, and that is transferable in the property itself. So there's really so much that we do. We also offer the repair pricer. What that's going to do is, based on a report, any of the red listed items, we use a zip code of the home to go ahead and then give you an estimation on the cost of repairs for your home. And that way you can work on your farm and other things. Let us go and be the ones who call electricians and plumbers and contractors. Go ahead and really do the footwork for you so you can continue the side of the transaction, and we can go ahead and make sure that all the inspection things are clear. Given these COVID times, we are going ahead and having the PED sent directly to me. So if we do work together, I can get the PED back to you in a few minutes, and then we can set up either a Zoom, a FaceTime, or phone call with the inspector that did the inspection, so that you, your clients, and the inspector can all gain clarity after the inspection itself is done. If you look in the chat, I've put all my contact information there. Please go ahead and give me a call or a text. We can give you quotes, and at the very least, let me help you vet other companies. Sometimes there may be a company that you worked with for a long time, or perhaps as of right now, I believe we're at 478 inspections for this week as of Friday. So we are just booked out. So it's going to be a little time to work with us. So if you have to go with someone else in that unfortunate event, please use me to go ahead and help vet other companies. Because again, it's very important to know who you work with. And what we do is we make sure that we go above and beyond. All 72 of our inspectors are InterNACHI certified. We're the only company in the country that actually has that certification as well throughout the company and everyone that works with us. So again, Dustin Smith of Elite, please look in the chat for all my information. I hope to hear from all of you. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. And then Brandy and Michelle, and then James, if you want to put your information, if you haven't already, in the chat room. So any of you listening can go to the chat room and you get their phone numbers and contact and all that. Thank you very much. Let me get into another topic here, still about disclosure, of course, and investor clients. Some of you might have investor clients, it would apply. And by the way, if you're new in the room or just got in here, if you could please mute yourself, because there's some background noise in my headset. So just make sure you mute yourself. Thank you. So here is one of the issues with investor clients, and that is they often don't know anything about the property because they've never really lived there, or they know very little. They have it painted at least, or usually some kind of remodeling or renovation or something to spruce it up. But they are sellers. They're regular sellers. It's not like great grandpa passed away and now they're like a trustee and they've got all these exemptions from things. They don't have exemptions from anything. They're treated in court just as if they had lived there for 20 years. So this is the common scenario. The buyers move in, they have some problems, they sue. Now we're in court and you have the judge asking, let's call him Mr. Investor Client, just to pick somebody, saying, hey, the buyers have moved in, they got problems with their flooring and there's a roof thing going on. They think there's a mold infestation they're having checked out. Why didn't you tell them anything about it? And what I'll show you here next is a stock photo, but it's very close to what it's really like, having been in court a zillion times. Mr. Investor Client's like, I don't know, Your Honor, I never lived there. I never actually spent a night there. I remodeled it and put it back on the market. And what'll happen almost every time now, the judge is going to say, I don't care if you ever lived in it or not. You ever, the buyers just plunk down, you know, depending on what market you're in, 500,000, $1 million, 900,000, 800, whatever, but they plunk down a lot of money. They have a right to know what's going on. And so the attorney for the investor client's getting nervous and thinking, I got to move the fault to somebody else. My guy's losing the battle here. And sometimes it lands in your lap. So a suggestion I have in the notes that you'll get, and make sure it's okay with where you are company-wise. Well, we usually make a suggestion that our buyers have a home inspection done. When you do that, and something I won't have time to get into this afternoon, but make sure when you write that down, now it's already in the RPA, but there's a special value you get in court when you personally recommended get a home inspection, but never recommend that they find a licensed home inspector, and that's because the state of California does not license home inspectors. There aren't any. So I like words like professional, qualified, maybe certified, but I like professional, qualified. It kind of puts a burden on the buyers to make sure they pick the right company. But anyway, we do that for buyers. We don't do that so much for sellers, but especially when you have a seller who's an investor client and has never lived there, or you just have a regular seller who happens to live in Denver or somewhere, and they've got some properties in Southern California, and they're just selling them, and they've never occupied them either. This is so when they try to dump this on you for failure to disclose, you or really your attorney would say, actually, my client, perhaps you, strongly recommended, knowing they knew little about the property, that they have the home inspected, and now the seller would have provided the buyer with a substituted or additional disclosure. What I have seen happen many times, I actually have an old stapler, old-fashioned stapler on the desk. I have seen sellers in that situation spend, you know, $400, whatever it is, and they have like Elite do an inspection, and they actually staple it on to the TDS. They don't really have to do that. They're on the first page of the TDS. There's a place near the top where it says substituted or additional disclosure, see Elite inspection report number, whatever. And the buyer has more information from that seller than they would have had from a regular seller who's lived in the property. That's because home inspectors are more detailed. So it's a really good thing for your protection. Let me talk about building permits. And I know that in our audience today, we're covering a wide area geographically. And so it does, the building permit thing and what you do and what you shouldn't do varies a little bit, but not very much. And in the decades I've been talking about this statewide, there's a couple of places that, the city of Alameda, for example, not the county, but the city right next to Oakland, they do a very unique thing I've never seen before anywhere with building permits. But anyway, there's exceptions. But generally speaking, when you're involved in overwhelmingly speaking, when you're involved in a transaction and you either know or you can kind of figure out something's been tacked onto this house or whatever, and there may be a building permit issue, heightened by the availability and the number of ADUs, accessory dwelling units, that are out there, which are usually they're prefab, they're cheaper, better, everything easier to do. And there's almost always building permit issues. And especially more and more people, they're not putting in a guest house or something. They're just putting in like an office, and there are often building permit issues with that. But anyway, if you look on the AVID, next time you have an AVID next to you, look at it. On the first page in the fine print, says this is verbatim, quote unquote. California law does not require the agent to inspect the following. It has 4 items. One of them is public records or permits, right there. Also on page 1 of the AVID in the fine print, it says by statute, agent is not obligated to pull permits or inspect public records. So 2 times on the AVID, forgetting the RPA for a minute, but just on the AVID, it says you're not supposed to have anything to do with permits. And that's the position that I personally take. And that is to have nothing whatsoever to do with verifying, pulling, directing somebody somewhere. And this even includes a scenario which has landed several agents in court. The scenario is their buyers have moved out of Chicago, wherever. They're staying at the local, Holiday Inn, waiting for a week or 2 to close there with their new home. And they call their agent up, and this has happened several times. They call their agent up and they say, we're kind of sitting, hanging out in the hotel here, don't have a lot to do. And we know there's some permit issues, and we know that you aren't supposed to have anything to do with them. So it's good that they know that. But we don't have a car. Could you pick us up like at 10 o'clock in the morning, drive us to City Hall, stay in your car, and we'll just do the permit stuff, look into it, and then we can go to lunch or something, assuming restaurants are opened up again or something. Not a good idea. It's called Uber, Lyft, taxi, something else, because now you are in the liability loop. You got them to City Hall, and sometimes, by the way, City Hall, wherever, is not the place where they keep building permit information. And some cities, if they're big enough, they've got some permits at City Hall, some at the 3 blocks away at the Planning Commission's office, and they're all over the map. And there are contractors that do this for a living and have a hard time with building permit verification. So I have something in the notes, make sure it's okay where you are. Buyers are advised to check with local municipality regarding building permit information. It's kind of a repeat of what's already been said, but you personalized it for this transaction, for this client. And notice that I have local municipality, never city of Pasadena, city of whatever, because sometimes if it's a small community, they don't have the staffing for building permit inspectors, and they contract with the county or a bigger city. You're not supposed to worry about that. You got nothing to do with it. Your buyer is supposed to find out who the local municipality is, and it does vary. So a few things about that. Here's one. We got about 20 minutes left. I have, believe it or not, but not on this PowerPoint, but on my computer, somewhere around 28 hours of non-repeating disclosure information. We won't go that long today, just for another 20 minutes. But anyway, not a good idea to ever complete the AVID during the home inspection. It's beyond not a good idea. It's from a litigation potential, it's a terrible idea. And if there's any way you can avoid it, here's why. Home inspectors have a much more stringent standard of care. They're looking under sinks, they're up on the roof if they can do that safely, they're in the attic. If there's a crawl space, they're under the house. You probably don't have any temptation to go down there. So they're much more, you might say, intrusive. So they will see things and find things that you have no requirement to find or see. So let's go with this picture. Bedroom looks pretty good. I don't see anything that I'd want to disclose here. I'm certainly, because I'm a real estate licensee, I wouldn't want to move the bed out of the way. If there was a throw rug, I wouldn't be moving that. I don't want to look behind that painting of flowers. I want to stay in my standard of care. But let's say right behind that painting, there is a stain or a situation that looks like that. looks bad, looks like a mold thing, looks like a lawsuit waiting to happen, but I can't see it. I therefore have no disclosure and no liability. But if, let's say it's Monday when the deal comes together and I'm representing the buyers, Monday afternoon, and the buyers are really on top of everything, they give Dustin a call, they set up an inspection for Friday, it's very easy to say, well, I'm going to be there with him anyway. Monday, a few days away, Friday, two birds, one stone. I'll do my AVID at the same time. Just an absolutely terrible idea. You want to have your AVID done, dated, finished, so that when you get the home inspection report, it has a different date showing you did not do it at the same time. Because if you are there, which, by the way, I'll mention in a second, a good idea to be there, good idea for your buyers to be there. It's just not a good idea for you to be doing the AVID at that time. So let me kind of summarize it and I'll explain. Always complete the AVID prior to the home inspection, preferably days before. Never delay, this is a whole nother topic, not so much in a hot market, slower market where there are more repairs being negotiated and there may be substantial repairs that the sellers are willing to do, and it's going to take a month and the deadlines are extended, doesn't make any difference. When there is a contract, on the listing side, you can do the AVID anytime, sooner the better too. But when you're representing the buyers and there's now a contract, if you can get out there the next day, get out there the next day. If not, the judges will look at calendars, day planners, and say, it came together Monday. Why didn't you do your AVID on Tuesday? You know, it's got to be like I was having surgery or something. It's not like that's my spa day or whatever. They want you out there right away. And one more thing, when the home inspection does take place, it's a really good idea to be there, not to do the AVID, you've already done that, but to be there, have your buyers meet the home inspector. Most buyers that sue have never met the home inspector. Just having them meet the home inspector, developing a rapport, having that little closing conference thing is a really good way to avoid litigation. Not talked about too much even by myself. So good thing to do. So the only objection I ever get to this is, well, now I get the home inspection report and he found something that I didn't see. Well, usually it's something that you're not required to see, like what was behind that painting or picture painting, something up in the attic. You know, it's kind of like when you get the termite report and they say, oh, there's termites in the attic. I got to go change my AVID. No, well, no, you don't, because you don't go up in the attic and you're not looking for wood destroying organisms. It's just not your job. It's something that they do. If there is something that the home inspector found that you should have seen, like the window's broken in the living room and you just didn't see that, I'll real quickly explain a way to get that disclosed without modifying the AVID. Let's see if I can get to that. Advertising issues. Don't talk about them too much because there's not much litigation in advertising. So let me just do a couple of minutes on it. Let's say you have a bullet point, you have the listing, obviously. It's either like a hard copy flyer on your website, in the cloud, doesn't make any difference where it is. You don't want to use words like totally or completely when you're describing like remodeling or renovation. It's better to go with the pleasant sounding words that nobody really ever sues over, like beautiful, wonderful, delightful. You know, we don't use words like beautifully in disclosure. We don't use adjectives at all in disclosure, but advertising, you can do them prolifically. So thumbs down, and let me just complete them. Totally remodeled, completely renovated, fully rehabbed, you know, expressions like that. I can tell you, having done this for so long, that when push comes to shove in court, and the opposing side has a hired gun licensed contractor who has done literally 5,000 remodels and things involving permits, they will say, you cannot totally remodel a bathroom faucet. Literally. They'll come up with some reason why, and you just don't want to be in that position. So don't use words like that, but these unbridled, beautiful, wonderful, bright, amazing, lovely, charming, exquisite all day long, no problem. Also want to avoid the word new. Let's say it's a 3-month-old dishwasher built in, the buyers have been, the sellers have been there for 10 years. The dishwasher, bit the dust. They go to an appliance store, they have a new dishwasher. Maybe it's brand new. And do you know the difference? Can you, on the stand in court, explain the difference between new and brand new? Most people can't. So you don't want to use those words. New is a litigious word. There is a word that you can use. It's kind of like new, but there's just no litigation on it. And that's the word newer. I've never seen any lawsuits on the word newer. I think it's because nobody's quite sure what it means. It sort of means newish, and people just never sue over it. So don't get caught up in how old is the appliance, the built-in appliance, and is it new, or is this, forget new, forget brand new, newer is a better way to go. Okay, off of advertising, back to the disclosure thing. Let's say the elite inspector finds something, a roof issue or a roof repair thing or something noted in the report, and the buyer's freaking out, and you are on the listing side, so the buyer's agent says, hey, my client wants to know what happened to the roof. You don't know, so you ask your sellers. It's not unusual to see the listing agent respond to the buyer's agent with something like this after talking to the client, after talking to the sellers. The roof leak was repaired a year ago. Seller will provide the contractor's receipt. Sounds nice, but it's incredibly litigious. I don't really know. If I'm the listing agent, I don't know if the roof ever leaked. I don't know if what was done was really a repair or just something done. I don't know if it was a year ago, and I don't know if the person who did it was a qualified licensed roofing contractor. So it's always better when I get information from my sellers, because they know I don't, a couple of sentences on what happened with the roof. And verbatim, and the key here, like high school English class, is quotation marks. Saves the day. Open quotes and close quotes. It's like whatever they said, I just send over to the other side and don't add my 2 cents worth. If I am going to narrate it in some way, what you see in yellow is okay because it's within open quotes and close quotes. It's verbatim. It's not my information and not my liability either. I don't want to come up with this on my own. I don't want to translate or interpret. The seller stated verbatim. This came from them. It didn't come from me. I wasn't there and I don't know, but they do. So it's a much better, less litigious way to communicate information when the other side wants it and you have the listing. Here's something about the, on the AVID on page 3 that a lot of agents don't notice, and if they do, it's sometimes misused. So on the AVID, if you look to the left there with the arrow, number 3, other observed, or on page 3, I should say, other observed or known conditions not specified above. So this is a good thing to have on the form. It just gets misused a lot because sometimes agents think of things that they wanted to say, but it doesn't fit anywhere else in the AVID. So they write them down here. But because this is part of the AVID, you should only write things on these lines that are within the standard of care of the AVID, not something else. So that's what it says there, verbatim. Some tips. It's not a catch-all category for items that are outside the standard of care of the AVID. So for example, if you're at the property and a neighbor says, hey, I live next door and the roof leaks, they didn't tell you that, or every winter when it rains, the living room floods out, that's neighbor hearsay. Neighbor hearsay is an issue to contend with, but it has nothing to do with the AVID. That's a limited visual inspection that you're doing just on your own. Or you're there and you're looking around and you know that in the MLS it says it's 2,600 square feet, and you say this can't be more than 1,300 square feet. Maybe true, maybe dealt with, but it's just not an AVID issue. So anything you list here that's outside your standard of care increases your liability. If it's not an AVID item, don't mention it there. What might be okay, perhaps, let's say the home's been vacated by the sellers, they had it professionally staged. That's what it was like when you were there. Doesn't have to be in that spot on the AVID, but that would be an example, something that would probably be okay. So a couple things about the trap on AVID, page 3. Oh, well, let me just mention this here. I'll do some things quickly. I get asked about this a lot. So if you look at either section 3 or 4, depending on which side you're on, just some tips on filling this out. I know it's really simple, so I'll just spend a moment on it. So you only want to check off the top box. Well, this is my opinion. You'll go with office policy, but where it says see attached AVID, check off that. Since all of your disclosure information is going to be on that form, you don't want to write anything at all on those 4 lines. Anything. Don't say, I recommend you get a home inspection, or don't say anything there. Keep them blank. Buyers will go into court with their attorney saying, oh, I started reading there and I didn't know there was another form, and they got all these excuses. So blank, and then of course, you know, the name and date and all that sort of thing. So it's really simple. But if you're using the AVID, check off the top box, nothing on those lines, and then sign in or whatever. That's it. Okay, now let me do this quickly. Let's say back to one of the topics I was covering, where you get the home inspection report and you say, ooh, I forgot something the home inspector found. Now, if it was something up in the attic, this is something that you should have seen, not something on top of the roof or under the house or wherever. This is something that you should have noticed and you neglected to mention it. Well, slightly old-fashioned now, but it works really well. If it's okay with your company, if you have a client, if your buyer, you're representing a buyer here, of course, cooperates on email, you send them an email and they respond to you. You can use email for this. It's a 3-part thing. I'll explain it here. It'll be in the notes. Mention an item of interest. I'll give you an example in a second. Put in your broken window disclosure. That's what you want to get to them. And to prove they got it, ask them a question that they must answer. You wouldn't want to ask them in number 3, did you hear it's going to be hot this weekend? They're not going to care. They're not going to bother to answer that. They would answer, are you meeting with your lender rep? Is it this Friday or is it right after the holiday weekend on Tuesday? They'll answer that. So you got to ask them a question that they're going to answer. So, hey, I want you to know that now that things are kind of lightening up with the virus, I think they're going to start that farmer's market. It's on Main Street, downtown, whatever. Check it out. That's just a reason to send them an email. Then you insert the disclosure that you should have made that is within your standard of care that you just didn't see. And then you ask them a question, you know, what's your physical mailing address? We have something to send you, documents. Are you meeting with the lender rep? Whenever they'll answer that question. And when they do, keep a copy of that email. Their response shows that they did 3 things. They received it. They had to read through your disclosure in order to get to the end, a question that they answered. And that's the way to do it. Let me do this real quick. I'm going to scoot down, and because this is a popular topic, and then we'll wrap it up. And by the way, if you ever want me to come to your office, I'm not, well, physically, if we can eventually, but by virtually, let me know. As you can see, I don't sell anything at all, and I'm sponsored gladly by service providers like we have today. So there's no downside. Anyway, something near the home. Here's the scenario with litigation. I'll make this my last little topic. The scenario is when the buyers moved in, and especially in a hot market where they're making decisions real fast because they want that property and they don't want anybody else to get it. And they call you up a month or 2 later. They say, you know, we really like the house, but we just didn't notice that it's right next to a really busy street or a freeway or a train or whatever. So we have to disclose things that are near the property that might affect the quality of life. And it's a really easy way to do it, to disclose these things. The mistakes that are made by a lot of people in our business, it's really hard to make them, but they're made anyway. So first principle, no matter how obvious something is, you have buyers interested in the 2nd floor center condo, and they have been there 4 times, and they've been on the balcony, and they have been looking at the train go by. You still have to make a disclosure. So no matter how obvious something is, you still have to let them know, as crazy as that sounds. So we'll go with a golf course, Fairway Homes. This is one of your farm areas. You know a lot of folks there. You've done some deals there. Well, now there's an active transaction with the Fairway Home. So as obvious as the golf course is, we have to make a disclosure. You know that errant golf balls are an issue there. And you've heard over the years, having worked the area a lot, that most people in the Fairway Homes might mention to you, hey, you know, every week, you know, we're out in the backyard, we find a golf ball or two or three or whatever, just kind of part of living here. So that's kind of our beginning rough draft disclosure. But let's proceed to clean it up. I want to get rid of the numbers and the frequency. I don't want them moving in and saying, you told me one or two golf balls. It's like 7 or 8. I don't want them to do it. I don't want to have that conversation, so I'm never going to disclose it that way. I'll go with golf balls occasionally hit the house. I provided disclosure to them for them, but I haven't pinned myself into a corner. But then I don't really want to use the word occasionally, so I just get rid of it before it's written down, so I don't have to argue about it. We're almost done. You can go like crazy on these things that never finish. We won't do that here. So the balls might be hitting the nice, shiny new Mercedes in the driveway, not just the house. So we finish up with golf balls hit the property. Now, here's the good news and the bad news. The good news is they will probably never sue you over golf balls hitting the property. So that's good. The problem is now they can sue you over all kinds of things that bother them about living so close to a golf course that I didn't mention. So they say, hey, we just love these free golf balls we're getting. It's like an Easter egg hunt every weekend. We pluck them out of the garden, but you know, it really bothers us. And you know, frankly, we're talking to an attorney about it. 5 o'clock in the morning, the lawnmower, landscape crews, tractors start up, and we just retired and we can't sleep in now. Now, in real life, by the way, you would say, hey, there's a golf course next to you. It has grass. They cut grass, but we can't do that. You have to go with the litigation thing here. And then they'll say, oh, this is a whopper, especially if the buyers have kids. They'll say, we never thought about this, but once a month they do this insecticide, pesticide, and even like chemical fertilizer spraying. The last time this cloud of toxic poison floated through our neighborhood, we all got sick. We're going to move out the next time every time they do it. And when they move out, if they're in touch with an attorney, they're not going to the Motel 6, by the way. They will be at the Hyatt Regency Presidential Suite because they've been told you ain't going to be paying for this. So they said, I never expected that. And the sprinklers and the water and the window cleaning and all that. So for your consideration, to wrap this up soon, here's how to do it. Tell them what's there near their home. Don't tell them what might bother them about what's there. Golf course is adjacent to property. Now, everything that happens at a golf course is encapsulated into that disclosure. It's just a much better way to go. Here's a couple of others. I don't even know what part of California I was in. It looks like a La Quinta Inn somewhere. Let's say that house is for sale. I disclosed that the home's next to a hotel, period. I'm not going to say there's 24-hour check-ins and check-outs, so there's traffic in and out all day long, all night long. And the hotel sponsors a beer barbecue bash Friday night. Everything that happens at a hotel is in that disclosure. And if I can make a suggestion, never get caught up in, is the golf course or the hotel, whatever, is it near the property? Is it adjacent to the property? Is it proximate to the, never makes a difference. Just let them know what's there. So a couple more, and then I'll make some concluding comments. So if I were to ask you, what's behind that wall? We'd probably all guess correctly. This happens to be Interstate 5 in the Downey, Norwalk area, metro LA. So any home that's that close to any freeway, there's going to be a disclosure. And so let's take the home that's right up against it. When I have more time and I get some feedback and what would you disclose, often agents will say, well, I'm going to mention that there's a high wall there. Now, I never mentioned high. That would be debated in court, by the way. They will bring in wall experts. They will bring in height experts. They will bring in everybody to debate you. So the wall is not part of the transaction. I'm not making any money on it. I'm not losing any money. It's not part of the subject property. So I'm not going to mention it. There's no upside for me to mention it. What I would mention is that the place is next to a freeway. And then everything that happens at a freeway is in that disclosure. The problem is we can't write a disclosure list because the list is never long enough. Let's do it for a freeway. I've got to mention that it's going to be loud, noisy. Okay, they may not be bothered by that. They may see it, think it's, well, it's background noise. What really bothers them, they say, it's not so much the noise, it's the gasoline fumes. Oh, I gotta write that down, gasoline fumes. Number two, or well, diesel fumes from the trucks. Have you ever seen a 18-wheeler truck blow a tire and it's like a missile going down the freeway? Oh, I gotta mention that. You will never finish the list. It will go on forever, so don't start it. Just tell them what's there. And one more, and I'll make some concluding remarks. Carl's Jr., near and dear to my heart, is right next door to the Orange County Association of Realtors, where I do a lot of seminars or did in the speaking days in person. Down that drive-through, there is a wall and a sign. I've never seen this before anywhere. As a courtesy to our neighbors, please turn down your radio. Well, it's a 24/7 drive-through, and over this wall is a really big neighborhood. And I'm assuming that people in that neighborhood have gotten together and gone to the burger joint manager and said, hey, you know, radio's blasting at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, if you were selling a home down there in the transaction, you would probably want to disclose this home is adjacent to a shopping center. But if you made a list about, well, not going to say that. I'm going to say there's delivery trucks that are allowed in the morning, or there's delivery trucks that are allowed at night. You would probably never think of a sign like this. Oh, there's a 24-hour drive-through and people have you're just never going to make the list long enough. So you don't want to start the list. Just shopping center is adjacent to property, excuse me, and you are done with that disclosure. So here, because we're out of time, if you ever want me in your office, just give me a call, Robert Brand, disclosure.info@AOL. I am the last remaining member of AOL in the world, I think. And if you forget my name, if you go to any search engine, Google, Yahoo, Bing, and just put in something like California Real Estate Disclosure Training, I will always be #1 on the list because I've just been doing it for so long. And my thanks to Brandy and Michelle, Fidelity Home Warranty, Disclosure Source on the NHG side. James, who talked about what he does for mold, talk the buyer off the cliff, keep everybody happy. Dustin with the Elite Group. And Tom, thanks for having me in. And I will say goodbye to everybody. And if you ever want me back for part 2 or part 3 or part 8, just let me know. So I'll say goodbye to everybody.